Going back into the mail entries view, we get to see the context of the email that came in. And on the right-hand side, we see the very first attachment. But I'm actually going to say, you know what? I'm only going to process for data extraction the first page. That's the only invoice page. For the second attachment, same thing, only one page. The difference between the way that I'm processing the first and the second is that for one, I'm opting to actually save the pages as a attached document, and for the second, I'm not. Now that it's been processed by the AI, you can see that the one invoice resulted in two different invoice entries. Here's the first invoice entry with the data extracted. If I click on the eyeball icon, I can see the context of the original email. I close that. Here's the second invoice entry that, again, is based on that first email. So it's a one-to-many relationship. Okay. And I even saved the terms and conditions as a PDF attachment to this invoice entry. So you can always make sure that you keep the attachments that are not necessarily just the invoice on the actual invoice entry itself, so that you don't lose track of any context as you're processing these invoices. What I'm doing right now, or trying to do, is synchronize the purchase order, but unfortunately, this is actually an invoice that references two purchase orders. That's no problem. We can add those purchase orders, and the system knows to extract those POs from SAP. So now, across both purchase orders, there are 3 line items. And you can see that there's actually quite a few errors in terms of subtotal, total tax, and currency. So what I'm doing is, at the PO level, I'm looking to see how it differs from the invoice. And already I'm seeing that the billable amount was different. I'm assuming that the person that sent the invoice knows their actual price and the quantity. So we're going to take the invoice as the source of truth, and we're modifying the invoice entry before we send it to SAP to accurately reflect the invoice. Of course, you might opt to send an email to the supplier, or you might opt to even talk to your procurement head. Quickly reconcile, and then I'm requesting the person that made the PO to please amend that PO to accurately reflect the vendor prices. Okay, so I can do that with the create a request ticketing system. Before I showed you the good to pay system, this is now the PO modification example. And I'm even explaining more in detail. It seems like you overshot some quantities and you mispriced, and I'm sending that over. Now, demo user is going to receive that email, just like you saw in the previous email, in the previous example. Now, I'm actually making a second order modification. That second order modification is an additional request, and I'm asking them to please add the freight charge to the PO, because it's still not fully reconciled, because there was an unexpected ground shipping charge, right? And I can even make a copy snippet tool and then place it in as a screenshot for somebody else to actually look and see a visual of what it is that you're requesting. So that's the first invoice processed for now, at least partially. The second invoice is a non-PO invoice. What I'm doing here is I'm selecting the vendor based on the data that was captured. It automatically places that vendor data. And what you can see here is I'm going to add GL coding based on the historical values from before. It tells you when that was coded in that fashion. And you can, at the point of the GL definition, you can also define different axes. These are called analytical axes or analytical dimensions. They are custom to your organization, however you guys do it, your financial reporting. But you can, at a per line item or per cost center allocation GL coding, you can also add that analytical dimension. And like I said, that's going to help the financial reporting.